Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller and Terrence Moore. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Gentlemen, this is our final edition of 2022. We have made it to the end of the year, so it is important that you gentlemen finish strong tonight.
Okay.
No pressure. Well, let's talk about New Year's resolutions and predictions a little bit. Let's spice it up a little bit. Jim, let's kind of look from the municipal level all the way to the federal level. Give us a little bit in regards to what you think each of their New Year's resolutions should be and some predictions for 2023.
All right. Well, can I start in my hometown of Williamsport?
Please.
I think that Williamsport largely needs to keep doing what they're doing. I think they've got a lot of positive momentum there. I'm excited. There's businesses moving in. There's entrepreneurs that are interested. You see a lot of building. You see more storefronts going up. It really has been a significant transformation, and I'm just hoping that any adverse economic situation doesn't counteract the good work that's being done there.
And it seems that community is really leaning in on tourism.
They're leaning in on tourism, but even the landlords that have properties are updating and upgrading the properties. I have a friend that lives in one of them, and he has been very happy with what his landlord is doing for him and for his living conditions. Not that they were bad in the first place; they were they were always acceptable. But now they're saying, you know what, we're going to put a new kitchen for you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. That's a great thing. So I think from Williamsport's perspective, I think they have a lot to be happy about, and I think they have a lot to be excited about. So and my advice to them is to keep doing what you're doing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I get the feeling of kind of a united front in Williamsport as well. I know when we had the mayor on, that was earlier this year, or last year.
It was last year.
And they talked about the unity that was happening with the development that was going on, and even some of the vandalism that happened in the community rallying together and kind of coming together around
at the cemetery.
Yes.
At the cemetery, and look at the people that showed up to fix that. Mm-hmm. And they made it very clear that that's not what we do in this town. So I'm very, very happy with what's going on up there. Some of the other municipalities, I can't speak much to Hancock, but it seems like they have some interesting things going on as well. Boonesboro and Smithsburg, I think, because of their location, are communities that will continue to grow because of their proximity to Frederick and just being a little bit further east. So I think there's, and of course, Fort Ritchie, the former Fort Ritchie, it'll be interesting to see what starts to happen there. It sounds like there's some positive momentum on there as well.
Well, you have the museum that's coming.
Right, exactly. Let's go to the big dog, the city of Hagerstown. I think there's momentum there as well. I think they've got a couple of things that I would like to see them have a New Year's resolution on. And first of all is communication and marketing. I think that they probably think they do a good job at communicating and marketing, but given what you see on social media and elsewhere now, and I'm leaving way for the fact that some people are just going to jump on social media and say Hagerstown stinks, right? That's going to happen. Maybe even a lot of people. Whether or not
Baltimore and all the other stuff that
whether or not it's true doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just what they say. That said, I think they should resolve to continue to tell us and socialize what the projects that they're working on, what the projects that the entrepreneurs are working on, what the projects that the state is working on, like the stadium and some of the other things, what that means to not only the citizens of Hagerstown, but also to the larger Washington County and even, beyond that, communities. I really think that would be a big thing. I think it's great that we talk about how active our police force is, because that I think is good from the standpoint of giving those whose mind can be changed, who are willing to look at the situation and realize that people are really trying to do something positive, it gives them the confidence that yes, things are going on. I am not, however, a favor in the way that they do it. In my mind, that's like, I mean, it's all in the presentation, right? It's like your favorite dinner, a filet mignon and potatoes au gratin and roasted broccoli with Parmesan served on a garbage can lid, right? It just doesn't work. We had 1,700 calls last week. The first thing I think about that is, oh my God, there's much more going on here bad than I thought. 1,700 calls in a city. Well, guess what? I'm sure those 1,700 calls are all not about crime. They're about many, many things, some of which are nothingness. Well, they're important, but they're not suggesting that they had 1,700 incidents, I'm guessing, but I don't know.
Right.
Tell me what those numbers mean. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's happening year over year, month over month, week over week in the city.
I think to that point, transparency helps.
Transparency helps.
Right.
But transparency is only good if you give the level of detail that answers the majority of people's questions. Because then people like me that get on social media, when I see some egregious, frankly stupid post that says Hagerstown stinks and I want to respond with facts, I'm now armed with the facts.
Yes.
And I don't have those facts right now.
Informed citizens are your ally.
Right.
Right? And I think that's the big issue right now. I think sometimes they're not as transparent, worrying about what is going to spark or the conversation is going to trigger, but it's the exact opposite, right? The more people learn more, the more people that are allies to help you combat and educate their peers, their friends, and people that they're in their circle of influence to do a better job to really understand what's going on and not make assumptions.
Well, and by doing that, and I'll give you a perfect example, and I don't remember the specific element, but there was something about the labor market that somebody posted on social media that it was just doom and gloom. So I went to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and I looked up the actual number and I posted a link to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and then reiterated what it said, and the guy shut up because guess what? He had nowhere to go because he was dead wrong. And I didn't say you're an idiot for posting this. I said, hey, here are the facts. They don't support your argument.
You're assuming that he shut up because you posted an article. He may have just shut up because he didn't want to read the article. Because again, your audience on social media is not looking for the meat. They look at the headlines.
The end result is still the same. He shut up.
Right.
Yep.
And at some level, I feel like if you could get these people that are posting just absolute garbage on social media that is absolutely untrue, or blown out of proportion, or not based in fact, if you can just get them to shut up, I think that's a major step forward.
Well, you're not going to get that.
But even the saying, don't argue with fools because from a distance people can't tell who is who.
Right.
So getting into an argument and combating with them doesn't help anyone. And sometimes just educating that person, whether they receive it or not, you've educated somebody who's an observer to that conversation.
And that's
as well.
exactly my point, Terrence. If 100 people read that article and 5 people look at my post and say, wow, that guy's got the facts. He's not stating just outrageous opinion.
But the problem is not individuals' posts. It is the fact that we don't have a robust newspaper that is reporting on the issues in a manner that is informing the public.
Well, you're absolutely right.
Because
but I would argue
they post some things, and then it's just a lot is left open to interpretation. And the Herald Mail comment section is where all the action is, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where you just kind of have the free for all.
Even though, and I'll use the phrase that I use, even though the Herald Mail and our TV station have both folded up like a cheap chair, I would argue that maybe not the TV station. I think they did honest reporting, but I think the Herald Mail has somewhat of a history, even when they were reporting more in Washington County, they had somewhat of a history of maybe leaving it open-ended to sell a subscription, that if they put the whole fact in there or put more of a context in there, it wouldn't be as interesting.
Right.
So that's a problem. And that's why we're here, right? I mean,
Well,
seriously.
Yeah, that's why you and Terrence are here.
Give as much information as we can.
Right.
But, you know, again, I always want to reiterate, we're doing it from our perspectives. And each of us have a different perspective.
We do.
Each of us have a varying level of education on the matters and the issues and information. But we come to the table, and even off camera, we learn from each other.
We
and it's
do.
okay to take a step back and go, I didn't know that.
Well, I think, Terrence, you and I can agree that our perspective is right, and Concrete over there.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Going into 2023, I am going to be less affected by the words that come out of your mouth. So,
Terrence, what do you think about the city or any of the other municipalities in Washington County?
It's going to be a busy year in 2023. I think a lot of groundbreaking is going to happen across the city. And, you know, even speaking from downtown outward, we speak about it all the time. You can educate as many people as you want and put it in papers and put it in posts, but until people see action, they don't connect with it. I think shovels going in the ground, work happening, construction starting to happen, really will give some people some comfort over some of the promises that they've heard. There's been a lot of promises from smaller communities to the community at large of things that were going to come and things that people were going to do and things that were on the horizon, and great things are happening.
Well, we've been talking about this baseball stadium for, what, 30 years?
yeah, but I think there's kind of two levels to it. There will be a segment of the population that will be encouraged by shovels in the ground. But I think that those are the investor types. That's your middle class, where they see opportunity and possibly increase home values and things of that nature.
And increased opportunities to do business in the city core.
Yes. But then there's another segment of the population where it's really not going to matter until it's tangible and that asset can be used and they can see that benefit.
See, I see it the opposite. I think the investor knows that when shovels in the ground, you're already behind the 8 ball.
True.
So I think they've already seen and understand that, you know, everybody else is going to be catching up.
But there's levels of investors, though,
No,
right?
no, absolutely. But I think a lot of it has been wordplay on social media and the news. So I think even the most casual constituent will walk around and see the stadium's work start happening, you know, or things starting to be built, not demolished. They see enough demolished. I think it's more about things being built up, and even framework and the busy work and the activity, you know, in bigger cities and things, when you see that construction site moving around, because that also brings foot traffic into your communities as well. When you see 30 or 40 construction workers coming and taking lunch breaks and, you know, and interacting down, I think that busyness will kind of reinforce the activity that everyone keeps speaking about. So I think for 2023, I really like to see them capitalize on the start of work. And going back to transparency, be transparent throughout it. Work, you know, I sound like a broken record, I say it all the time. The divisiveness has to stop. We're far too far along now. Things are happening. Let's all work together. Let's communicate effectively. Let's work with one voice as much as possible to speak internally to the community. Also, we have to really, my prediction is we finally get it and understand that we are a destination location for housing, and hopefully start investing in some housing here as well. When we see what came out of the pandemic, and a lot of large cities had opted, people living in large cities had opted to kind of relocate, these are the kind of communities they wanted to relocate to. Why not come to a community where the cost of living is so much lower, space is more abundant than it is living in a high rise or working in a major building in a crowded city. And you have some of the major amenities. You have an airport, you have a theater, you have an orchestra, you have a stadium, you have some of the
A museum,
you know,
you
parks.
have history with the Civil War and the Antietam, and I mean this community has just amazing assets.
I'm just going to sit here and disagree with both of you, gentlemen.
What are you disagreeing with?
Last week, and pretty much every week we've been together, you guys have been telling me that winter is coming.
Absolutely.
It is.
If winter is coming, I think that of the next 3 to 5 years, 2023 is going to be the toughest of all of them. Because if winter is coming, we're going to have an increased gap between the have and have-nots.
We are.
With an increased gap between have and have-nots, in the place, in the core, where you have all of this expansion and work happening, you also going to have more of a presence of those that are struggling. When we get into the spring and we are outside again, I just think that that's going to be a tough environment to kind of balance the two. And who knows what the job market is going to look like at that point in time, and is that going to precipitate pushing more folks into poverty? Because, I mean, again, we have a city that has a 25% poverty rate. It does not take much to tip us over the edge. We still are battling inflation really heavy. We still are looking at more interest rate increases. So the dollars of the have-nots are being squeezed infinitely.
I don't think you're disagreeing. And nothing I said, I've been a big proponent that winter. I believe winter is here, at least late fall, So I believe we're already dealing through the recession, and this holiday season will be a tipping point for a lot of people come out of it as we watch credit debt shoot through the roof as well. So we've seen a huge jump in credit debt, not only as a country, our debt, but individual debt is going to increase because we've created spending habits that people won't be able to maintain and businesses won't be able to survive on anymore. But everything I said, that momentum has already started to swing. You can't stop that. The stadium is going to start getting built. Those things are happening.
But what I'm saying is that still does not have an effect on the people.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But the best time to create leads is in your slimmest time, right? So you got to start preparing, or the community has to start preparing for. We're not going to stay in a recession forever.
No.
But we got to get out of it, and the only way you're going to get out of that recession is developing your income base of people here in this community, or recruiting higher earners from outside of the community.
Well, and Ron Bowers, my good friend, used to sit on this show all the time and talk about $15 an hour if we raise the minimum wage, that'll cure all of our woes. Well, guess what? We've got basically, it's not the minimum wage at this point, but we've got people paid at least $15 an hour. FedEx and some of these other move boxes from here to here jobs are paying $20 or $24 an hour. And these people still can't afford a hamburger because everything has gone up.
Yeah.
20, 30, 50. I told this story on this show a couple of weeks ago. The eggs that a year and a half ago I found a receipt were $2.12 for 38 eggs are now $8 or $9 or $10. That's unbelievable.
I just think in 2023 in this area, if you're a have, you'll be okay to weather the storm.
Well, and here's the other problem. And I say this with all due respect to my Democratic friends, the government can't buy us out, because it seems like whatever they do, the haves continue to have more.
Absolutely.
And the have-nots never get the relief that they're promised in those programs. You look at this, this funding through COVID, and I look at some of the businesses, there's lists of who got what. And you look at some of the businesses that got millions of dollars, and did their employees get raises? Yes, maybe they kept their job. That's good. That's certainly a positive thing. But the net benefit went to the employer.
Look at our oil companies.
Exactly.
They made money hand over fist, and they've capitalized not only from the pandemic, but as well as from the war that's in Ukraine.
Well, and there's a lot of nonprofits that are cash heavy at this point because of all of the funding. And I'm not arguing that's not a good thing in certain cases, but
no, but that's starting to dry up. And what you're seeing under the surface is those nonprofits haven't got back to the level of fundraising and bringing in dollars. So you may see some organizations that are pinched, especially those that, some of the larger ones that may have endowments, when those endowments have taken a 15 to 20% hit in the market, there's a squeeze there in regards to what they're going to be able to contribute and do.
And you got to remember, a lot of that money that came in early with PPP was to pay salaries.
I understand
So
that.
you have a lot of organizations that are overstaffed as well, and because they don't have volunteers. Volunteerism is down dramatically across all nonprofits right now. So they're paying people to do the work that volunteers traditionally used to do. And when that pinch happens, you're going to be taking a pinch where the donor base is so small. I'm serving a number of nonprofits, and the same names of the same people in the same organization come up every time.
After time.
Let's go get money from X. Let's go get money from Y. And until you can get a donor base that may not be the big dollar amount, but
is more expansive.
More expansive, right?
Exactly.
In the population.
Well, you're not going to get that in 2023.
Exactly.
That's my point.
Here's another point. With winter coming, or winter is here, according to you.
It's coming.
That's one of the things that I like that the county commissioners did last year, and I'm going to ping them on something here in a minute, but one of the things I liked is they put some money away in that rainy day fund. They had that surplus, and they spent some of it, and they spent it wisely in large part, in my opinion.
And we covered that.
But they also put some away.
And that's what the Governor Hogan did as well for the state. They followed suit. And, most municipalities should have followed suit as well, because that money, they should know where they stood before COVID and where they're going to stand after COVID. And every one of them should have been stockpiling something away or putting a heavy investment in infrastructure that is going to give you a return on your investment after the pandemic.
Can I go into my county list for a minute?
Yeah, that's where we need to go next.
Okay, let's go to county. Because we're already at 20 minutes, so we're over time on this one. Go figure. That never happens here, right?
Never, ever.
And this is also the municipalities. Both the municipalities and the county, in my view, need to make sure that our new governor is welcomed and understands the value that Washington County brings to the state of Maryland. We are a net taker of funds. In other words, we get more in services and from the state than we pay in tax revenue. That's a fact. We need to make sure he understands what the return on that investment is.
What is it?
Well, it's all the things we talked about. It's arts, it's entertainment, it's our rural heritage. It's the fact that we are becoming a destination community. That's exactly what it is.
But you don't see that return
It's
until
USMH that's educating our workforce and allowing people to reach higher levels. It's Hagerstown Community College that every time there has been a recession in recent history, Hagerstown Community College has risen to the top in terms of their ability to attract students and educate students. They are always doing a great job, and I have no doubt that if winter comes, as we think it's going to, or at least Terrence and I do, I think this new president of HCC will carry on that tradition.
It's going to be difficult with enrollment rates down in colleges
But
across
I don't
the
think.
board.
But I don't think they're going to go. I think when we start seeing the practical implications of a recession, I think people are going to turn to the community colleges. They're inexpensive. It's a good education. The curriculum is rigorous, and they leave there with a skill. These people are. I've served on one or more of their committees. These people are serious about educating our citizens.
I serve on a business curriculum committee, and it's been a year in the making already, and they're already planning for how to adapt to the change in environment and hiring, and they're a step ahead. And I love to see organizations be proactive. But the point I was make when I ask about the return on the investment is, the state only sees a return on that investment if you're offering something to the rest of the state.
But we are.
But that goes back to, how do we recruit outside of the county and pull people in from other counties who say they don't want to go all the way out there? Like, how do we build upon that? And that's what I would challenge the county to kind of piggyback on what you said as well.
Let me hit a couple
But to
others.
recruit those folks, we need housing,
We do.
Yes.
That's true.
right?
But I would argue, and the housing is the one piece that I will disagree with you on. I think the housing market is going to continue to take a tumble. I had lunch with our realtor friend that was on the show, Cynthia Sullivan, who is just, well, as you know, she's a leader in this community. She's a leader in the county in terms of her ability to buy and to sell real estate for folks and to create deals that make sense. But she talked about how much different the market is just today over what it was 6 months ago. Will that continue? Well, I don't know that she.
I'm not optimistic about the housing market at all. I'm not. I agree with you on that. I'm not optimistic, but I know that we have to at least take an effort to move towards trying to solve it in some way. We can't sit and
100%.
wait for it to come back itself.
Let me talk more about the county. So the notion, this last minute thing that the county, the last set of county commissioners passed around this warehouse and truck stop deal, I think they overstepped their bounds. I think that now we're in a predicament because people are trying to figure out, the lawyers are trying to figure out, the commissioners are trying to figure out, others are trying to figure out how they can resolve this in a way that is going to allow us to do what we need to do. But I mean, I am all for not having a county full of warehouses. It pains me.
Well, I
to
struggle
see.
with the fact that this decision was made in what we would call a lame duck session,
That's exactly when it was made.
right? I mean, you have it with two of the members that are no longer there anymore.
Right.
One,
They were two.
One that wasn't elected by the people ever,
Right.
and then the other one has moved on to a state seat. So that's tough. That's a tough cleanup mission.
It is a tough cleanup mission, and so my resolution would be to clean that up and to clean it up in an equitable way, and that would include the Don Bowman piece of it. I think we need to refocus on smart growth, and I think to do that we need to re-energize our business development office. I think we need to give them the teeth that they once had. A commission, not this past one, but a couple of commissions ago, took the teeth out of many of the boards and elements that people served on, including the airport commission, including the business development. And I think that teeth needs to be reintroduced, and we need to start listening to those people more, and we need to start being more proactive in that process. Just my opinion. I think that the school board needs to be a focus. We have a brand new person in charge of our school board. And I think we need to understand what his vision for our schools are. And from what I've heard, he respects everything that was done by his predecessor, but we all have our own ideas that we bring to the table. And I would be willing to bet that some of his are very good. So we need to make sure that not just the school board members are hearing him, but the county commissioners are hearing him and listening to him. And rather than, and I'm not saying they do this now, but rather than saying we can't do that, say, how can we do that? If it makes sense. And again, I'm not suggesting they've ever said we can't do that before. Right. I have no evidence of that. And then also I think we need to, on a county level, socialize more about what this 81 project means. I know it's in the very early stages. We had Congressman Trone really champion that,
right,
and commit to it. So we need to. I think that's a communication opportunity for our county.
I agree with all your points. I would just add on there as well that I would like to see the county collectively work with the city, or all of
the
them.
Municipalities.
Yes. You know, especially.
But they have a fresh start, right? Since you have a new county commissioner, right? You have a new president. You have a new direction that they'll go in. So I would hope that they will look at this as a fresh start to rebuild that relationship.
If it happens in the city, it happened in the county. There's no way around it, right?
But
so every city problem is a county problem.
Yeah, and you do have a new start, and you do have John, who's now the commission president,
New and but yet experienced.
You new but experienced, and also not only experienced in the commission, but experienced commissioner at kind of the state level through his prior service with the the Maryland State Association of Counties, for which he was president for a period of time. Right, I think one of his last years in office, which is a significant experience, and also, frankly, I have a lot of confidence in John Barr. I really do. I think he was a smart businessman. I think he's a dedicated community citizen. He is an entrepreneur. He's an asset to our community. I remember one of my first interactions with him. I was collecting money for the Salvation Army out at the
Mall.
Not the mall, the Prime Outlets, and it was really cold that day. And the lady that handed me the pot said, "Somebody will be around to put a heater in your little booth there." Guess who came to put the heater in my booth? John Barr.
Yep.
So he's not afraid to get his hands dirty.
No, I just think, lending his voice, though it's going to be.
But he's still only one vote.
Right. He's only one vote, but the vote comes with influence. Right.
He sets the table.
He absolutely. And I think no matter when you come to the table and you see the county commissioners vote or the city council vote, there's more influence outside of those rooms that influence that vote than anything else. Understanding the relationships and coming to the table informed and be able to articulate your why behind your vote is what I want to see a little bit more of elected officials, period. As far as the county as a whole, I'm with you. Warehouses, it's great to see development, but let's see some repurposing, right? Let's see some repurposing of some of these warehouses and some of these abandoned, buildings that we have in the community, and turn them into some potential housing, turn them into some potential businesses. Stop selling the farmland to new businesses and new factories to come out here and selling them on discount or some kind of benefit of taking over some of these factories and repurposing and repairing them so they're not eyesores. We talk so much about the blight of homes. Why don't we talk about the blight of some of these warehouses in our community? So I would like to see some investment in that and some creativity around solving some of these issues, because just as it's going to be thin and winter's coming for us, winter's coming for the municipalities as well. And they're not going to have the money. And I see many of them struggling to make budget, or balance a budget. So they're going to have to be real creative and know that it's not going to be coming down from the governor. We have a brand new governor, and I can't see overspending out of that surplus in a way that's going to save all the municipalities across the state. So especially out here, the further you're away from Annapolis. So we got to get real creative. And if we want to catch the eye of the governor, let's get creative and come up with some creative solutions and not just show up with our hand out.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other area in the county is we have a brand new sheriff.
Yes.
Right? And our new sheriff is going to bring ideas to the table on what he would like to see. And again, I've heard nothing to suggest that he isn't respectful of everything that Sheriff Mullendore did. And Sheriff Mullendore, I think we can all agree, was a paradigm pioneer for actually the state of Maryland. I can't tell you how many times that I had heard or had seen him that he was going to Annapolis to trumpet some program that we were the only county in the state doing it, and the state was interested in knowing how we made it successful, or us being a pilot for certain things. And that happened several times. So it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table. And again, I think our elected officials need to, and he's an elected official, but we need to listen to him. We need to understand what the good things he is proposing, and I think we need to give him an opportunity to put his flair on that office, because the sheriff's office is important. And we have been very fortunate in not having some of the events that other communities have experienced, and I would very much like to keep it that way.
I think that comes with training, and Sheriff Mullendore was big on making sure that his officers were the sheriffs were trained, and they had every access to the resources of training and the time to be trained properly as well. He always spoke highly and can recite every one of the trainings that they've went through, to address any of the major issues in the community. So I do hope that Sheriff Albert actually picks up that mantle and keeps that and raises it even higher to make sure that they're adequately trained.
Well, and Sheriff Mullendore was always respectful of his deputies. He was respectful of the citizens. And I think that when, if you have respect from the top, that's going to be mirrored by your people, so that when they have an incident with a person, they're going to give the person the respect they deserve. Now, there are some cases where, people get beyond the point where you can show somebody respect and you just got to do what you got to do. But for the routine kind of traffic stop or whatever the case may be, in the few times I've been ever stopped in my career, and all of which were under Sheriff Mullendore, it's always, the deputy's always been very respectful.
Well, you guys have a robust list. The only thing I would add to your list that goes along with your repurposing comment is historic preservation. We've talked about this previously, but in 2026, we're commemorating the 250th year of our birth of our country. There's going to be some federal money that's going to flow to states for legacy projects. I think that robust conversation between the city, the county, the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, and other organizations are going to need to come together and start talking about those things. I mean, I know that there was a period in time where the county was very interested in John Brown's farm, but the private owner wants to keep it. But I still think that there is room for a great partnership there with properties like that for tourism purposes. So I would like to see some more outside of the box thinking and some work together to make sure that we are highlighting the historic places throughout our county and finding those that we can really, dust off and shine up for 2026. Because I've always looked at America 250 as our next Olympics, right? We're getting ready for our next Olympics where we get to show off the best of our community. Our proximity to DC, if you look at the tourism that could come from all over the world, where we can be one of the key stops on that, I just think that's something we need to capitalize on. I know the state of Maryland is a little behind in its planning, but I just think that our county just needs to really start to work together and get to it. I know that Liz Chateau with the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area has a forum planned for January, so I hope that's going to be a springboard for a robust conversation about what we're going to do as a county to highlight our historic assets for that event.
National level, I only have one thing. We need to, I have two things.
Well, how about if we do this? How about if we take a break and then we come back, because we skipped state. So we got state and we have federal.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Let's do it.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more in regards to our government predictions and wish list after the break. Welcome back to the show. Gentlemen, let's jump right back in. In regards to the state, I mean, this is a new time, right? Governor Hogan was in place for 8 years. I mean, he was entrenched. I mean, it was kind of his roadmap, and now you're seeing, a new politician, right, and bringing in his administration, and you're seeing some of the stumbling blocks early. A little slow in regards to the transition and announcing staff. There was supposed to be some big announcements last week. Wasn't as much there. So they're off to a slow start, which you would expect, right, for as long as Governor Hogan has been there. And you're talking about, the Democratic Party. So there's some things to work through there. But Jim, let's start with you. Talk to me about your wish list from a state level.
So my wish list from a state level is that all of our elected representatives work with this new governor. And
Right.
that doesn't mean they abandon their principles or what they believe in or what they think should happen and shouldn't happen, but there's ways to communicate. There's ways to communicate disagreement that is far less problematic. And we see that all the time at the national level of people just going on media and trashing their counterparts on the other side of the aisle, and I hope that doesn't happen here. In most cases, I don't think it will. We do have a new Democratic representative, so it'll be interesting to see what her take on some of this is. We have Senator Quarterman, who I think will do well. We have a new senator from west of here, and Senator Mike McKay, who was former delegate. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And again, I think they are our plenipotentiaries in terms of educating the governor on the ROI of Washington County and Western Maryland.
Well, I think that Senator Quarterman is probably our best representative that's in a place for that. Last session, Senator Quarterman was in budget and taxation. He'll remain there, and he's built relationships on the other side of the aisle. So he will be in a prime position, since he is the senior senator, right?
Yes, he is.
To be able to articulate the investments that have been made, the impact, and the ancillary investments that are needed to make them successful.
And he's very articulate in how he communicates that, and I'm very hopeful that he will do a great job at that. And also, he's very respectful. If he disagrees with you, there are things that he and I disagree on, but he's always respectful in his disagreement. And I think that's a key. I think that's something that's sorely lacking in politics today, certainly at the national level and sometimes at the state level. And I just don't see that from him. I see him being respectful of people that he agrees with and respectful of people that he disagrees with.
I'll use this in Terrence's terminology. Senator Quarterman doesn't swing at every pitch.
No, he doesn't. He absolutely doesn't.
Right? He has some discipline in the strike zone.
Yeah.
Right, and my thing is, no matter what, I know there was some friction around elections, which always occur, but you only get one chance to make a first impression. And our delegation and our senators need to go down there and make a great first impression and really, talk about the future of what's going on in Western Maryland. So I'm hoping that there can be some humility and some unity around that, and kind of rallying together to make sure that they're speaking with one voice when speaking with the governor, and there isn't any division in their communication, which only hurts the constituents as a whole in Western Maryland. So I am looking forward to some of that as well. But I'm also going to put a little onus on the constituents of the state of Maryland, and say, give transition a chance. I understand that we had, Governor Hogan for almost a decade in office, 8 years in his term, and we also had a lot of staff that were anchored in that administration as well during that time. And it's not easy to transition all of that staff out and bring in new people in. So there's a learning curve that's going to happen with some of the staff that's going to be put in place, and the secretaries that's going to be put in place as well. And we're going to have to be a little patient. We already talked about what next year may bring, so that patience may be limited, but let's give the transition a chance, and and set the new governor up for success, because his failure doesn't help anyone.
No, it doesn't.
And we can't continue to compare the last 8 years to what his supposed next 4 years may look like. So allow that transition to help, and hopefully seeing what Governor Hogan put in his last budget, and where he's talked about where he want to see his continued focus, or where he put his focus in the budget at, that some of that gets picked up, but as well, but put a little of, and I know he talked about, transportation and education and healthcare, all great issues, but I think we need a little bit of everything and not swing one way or another to make a point. So I hope the new governor doesn't come in and trying too hard to put his stamp on, and just make change for change, and halt some of the progression and other things. But going back to constituents, I'll call the elephant in the room. He's a black man who's going to be governor in the state of Maryland, and everyone's not happy with that. And it's the few. So please, let's drown those people out, and that ignorance and those biases. Let's drown that out and put them aside, and don't give them
fuel to torch the government in this progression, because we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen on a national level. And also, just because he is a black man, let's not put added pressure or expectations on him to fix the ills of centuries of issues, right? So, I just
So you're saying he's not going to fix Baltimore City in one term?
no, he's not going to fix Baltimore City in one term. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And don't hold him accountable for that at all. It's just not fair. And remember that everyone in the state is his constituents, and he serves everyone. He serves every community, and we have to make sure that in that Washington County is represented well.
Right. For me, one of the things that I learned early on in regards to kind of doing community work was the significance of the amount of investment that Governor Hogan was making in Western Maryland. And one of the things I said to myself is, he is pouring in millions of dollars, but no one is advocating for the African American community. And that's when we decided to stand in the gap and says, no, we're going to advocate for this community. We're going to ask for millions of dollars for the Johnson Street community because there's millions of dollars going all over the rest of the city. I don't know if we're going to see that level of investment from a Democratic governor, regardless of the color of his skin. So I'm a little worried, not just based on the fact that he's a Democrat and there's competing priorities in other heavily Democratic areas, the economic conditions that we're facing, where the investments in our community may be less. We may have to do more with less.
Absolutely.
That comes to our community. So I'm worried about the drop off in the investment. The other thing that I'm worried about is the end of session was really contentious because you had competing interest between our delegation and what the city wanted. And I would hope that in a new administration where our community is trying to put on its best footing, that those things don't bleed over where you have a Democratic city thinking that it's their show because it's a Democratic president and making it ugly downstate. Because then it becomes a problem for our entire community if we're not working through our elected leaders to kind of get things done here. So I'm a little concerned about that piece of it. And Governor Hogan has kind of already laid down the gauntlet of, hey, I left you in great position, don't spend down all the surplus. So I just felt like there might be a natural squeeze in regards to that. And I looked at how much Governor-elect Moore visited Washington County. To my knowledge, did he visit the county or did he just visit the city?
I don't know. I guess I don't draw as much of a distinction as some might. If you're going to visit somewhere in a county, I think the obvious place would be the hub city, which is Hagerstown, the biggest city. I don't see that as a big issue.
He was campaigning, and he knew he was going to lose terribly out here as well.
True.
So as far as with limited time, I really think he made a business decision from his campaign, and made sure he came in touch with the largest population, the most dense part of the population, and let the chips fall where they may. And they did, 60-40? In
the city?
Just across the board out here in Washington County in Western Maryland, he lost.
Right.
So I think he was okay with taking that L, but he just wanted to come in and really touch on and make sure someone came out.
Well, in that, I hope there's not a disinterest in this part of the state.
There may be, but I wouldn't read that into that particular decision. I think I agree with Terrence. I think that that it's just a business decision, and quite frankly, I think it's a logical business decision. If you're going to go somewhere, where do you go? Do you want to go where you could get an audience of?
No, I get it.
The
Campaigning is different from once you're governing. I get those differences, but it's still a concern that I have.
It is.
Right, because if dollars are getting squeezed, we lose out to metro areas all the time, especially as a net taker. So, I mean, that is a concern of mine. And how we work together. Because if you remember, even under Governor Hogan, it was getting a little ugly because the majority of our delegation was trying to escape to West Virginia.
Yeah.
So I think we were very fortunate that the majority of those investments were already made, right? That didn't hurt anything in regards to kind of how things were moving. So I'm still optimistic, but in the thing that I've learned, it's really not as much about Governor Moore. It's about his staff. It's about his people. It's about those relationships and those people that visit our community and understand the robust work that's been done and what can be continued and what new projects can come out of it. So
Yeah, I think I'm a little less worried about initially, especially in the next year or so, because you have multi-million-dollar investments that you got to come check in on.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a medical school, you have a stadium, and something great that I don't think we really focus on with that stadium is that the baseball team. Now Frederick came with the baseball team as well that are joining this league.
the independent league. So you got a natural rivalry.
That you're tying these two communities
communities
together finally as well, where there will be some transportation that may be happening back and forth if we build this up the right way, where you got people from Frederick willing to come out to Hagerstown and vice versa, and we got to put our best foot forward. So I really think those kind of investments and that kind of movement, and also we look at Frederick, we had a lot of strong candidates that did come out of Frederick downstate as well in some big elections, that brought some more attention to Frederick. So we can piggyback on that momentum and be more inclusive of Frederick and Washington County. We are Western Maryland, not to discount the other counties as well, but we are the gateway into Western Maryland and kind of have that united front. I think we'll see more visits than we've probably seen in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So quickly, gentlemen, because we keep stretching these topics out nationally.
Yeah. Stop the trillion-dollar investments. Stop finding reasons to spend money that we don't have. It is a significant reason for our inflation. It is. And economists will tell you that. I'm not an economist. I'm not smart enough to be an economist, but I've read enough of their works to know that when the government spends money, when the government prints money like we have been doing since 2020, this is an inevitable result of it. Inflation.
We were spending money before 2020, though.
But we ramped it up, baby.
We did ramp it up, but again, those tax cuts didn't pay off either.
No, I'm not saying they did.
But we weren't loaning any money since 2020 either to offset some of that money printing either. So I agree with that. But I also, let's not just put it on 2020.
It's not.
This was bad
No,
policy
absolutely.
since 2008 when those interest rates remained too low for too long, and we made some quick decisions about the central bank, and we never removed some of those controls that put in place that should have been removed a lot sooner than they were.
Yeah.
So it put us in a very bad and vulnerable situation when 2020 actually happened.
I've got one more. Stop the Civil War in Congress versus the administration, regardless of who's in office.
That's
Whether
not
it's
happening.
then we're doomed.
That's
Because
just not happening.
This is going to be the death of this nation.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't care whether you're talking about attacks on Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton. I don't care.
Republicans are going to have the House, so it's their turn for the investigations that they see fit.
Right, and you know what's amazing is the stuff that the Democrats said should never happen as soon as they got in power happened, and now that the Republicans are in power in the House, the investigations that they said should never happen are going to happen. I see it coming. I hear Sean Hannity. I ran past his radio show at some point, and we're back on the...
Are we back on Hunter Biden?
We're back on Hunter Biden. They found... The laptop has been found, and of course, now that Twitter has new ownership, there was a big cover-up, and the government paid them. It's just, we got to stop fighting. We got to stop trying to murder.
How about we do it
each other.
locally first?
Well, you know what? I don't think
work our way out.
it exists as much locally. I mean, there are pockets, and I know one of the pockets that you're probably referring to, and I would refer to the same pocket.
Couple of quick things. First, the pandemic. Okay, it's over. We are where we're at. This is it. We're not.
We back outside.
We back outside. This is our norm. This is who we are. Supply chain issues and China shutting down and all that. This is it. Let's deal with it. It's no longer an excuse. Let's move past that. Cryptocurrency. No. We're seeing it. We're seeing what FTX is happening, and more is going to come, right?
Winter is coming.
Winter is here for cryptocurrency, and everyone that made money, great, best pyramid scam, the most international pyramid scam you ever want to see in your life. Everybody else, get out, get a paddling, because it's going to crash big time right now, and the investigation, someone has to pay. Too many vulnerabilities. But also, post-pandemic, just on a serious note, education and mental health, put some money into it. Right now, we really need some dollars put towards education and mental health. We learned about the cracks in the dam that we had in education and mental health, and I can't turn on the TV or go on social media again and see more of the results of this, even in suicide. So,
understood. Only thing I have for you gentlemen, since Terrence bled all the time, dollar cost average. Dollar cost average into your investments. Ride the market. Dollar cost average.
Okay.
There we go.
Good
That
advice.
is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But most importantly, join us again next year for another episode of The Flip Side.